Kansas State ends non-conference play in terrible shape, and they are in for a rude awakening if they don't turn things around very quickly.
You are Locked On Kansas State, your daily podcast on the Kansas State Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Kansas State, your daily Kansas State Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Christian Rauh. You can find me on Twitter at Christian S. Rauh. And thank you so much for making Locked On Kansas State your first listen every single day. Welcome back to my everydayers. Today's episode is sponsored by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel because right now, new customers can finish the season with $250 in bonus bets on your first $5 bet. So visit FanDuel.com today to get started. Well, welcome to another week of Kansas State coverage. And unfortunately, as we head into the holidays, it's not all holly jolly for the Wildcats. This weekend, the men's basketball team had another blunder to finish non-conference play. And really, it's been such a disappointing season so far. They end non-conference play with what's a better word than devastating loss to Wichita State, 84-65. And it's just not seem to be getting better anytime soon as we head into Big 12 play. Kansas State finishes non-conference play 6-5. They finished 0-2 on the road and against a Wichita State team in Wichita for the first time in, I believe, 24 years they played at the stadium. And we're going to get more into that here based on what Coach Tang's comment said about if we're going to go back there anytime soon. But I want to get into the good, the bad, the ugly, because there's a little bit of everything in this one. And then we're going to wrap up and talk about Coach Tang's comments and where he thinks about this game and moving forward. And then we are going to look forward into the Big 12 as we get closer to seeing what this team can do, trying to get an idea of this identity. We're still asking for it. Are we even going to have an identity when this is all said and done? We didn't find that out in 2024. We got one more game to see if we can do that before the new year wraps around in the Big 12 opener against Cincinnati. So we'll talk about that on this show of Locked On Kansas State. But before you do so, if you're listening here, please hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. We're growing it. We just passed 100 subscribers. They've only been around for about 2 weeks now. So thank you so much for joining and adding into the conversation. Hit like, join the comments too. Join the discussion. I'd love to talk to some Kansas State fans. So please drop your comments below. And if you're listening in audio form, just do me a favor and rate the show 5 stars if you could as well. It'll help the algorithm push it out and do all that great stuff for the Kansas State podcast here that we're rolling here for Locked On. All right, let's dig into the good, bad, and the ugly because there is some. And I think there's going to be a lot of doom and gloom on this show. So let's get the good out of the way. And I think the first thing we should say right off the bat is for the first good is, where have you been all my life, Buddy Rich? I mean, how great was that outing from Buddy Rich against Wichita State? He winds up coming off the bench, playing 19 minutes, and then those 19 minutes has a career-high 20 points, going 8 for 13 from the field, 3 for 5 from three-point land, and was phenomenal. I mean, he really was one of the only players that was pushing the paint, wasn't afraid of some of the big guys from Wichita State, and it was super impressive. We need to see more of McCaleb Buddy Rich in the upcoming games. Absolutely, we need to see more of him. I think that is the biggest takeaway out of all of this, is that Buddy Rich should not be sitting on the bench, and especially in some games like he didn't even play against Drake. We need to see him at least get 20 minutes a game from here moving forward, because that was incredible. And hopefully it wasn't just a one-hit wonder. Hopefully we see more from Buddy Rich. And he's one of those only few guys in the program that's been here last year and this year as well. So it's nice to see in a weird way, a homegrown player, because we don't have many of them, so that's as pretty close as you get, do well for Kansas State. Coleman Hawkins, I think you're going to see some plus and some minus from him all season long, but what people like to say now is he pads the stats. He picks up stuff in every single category, and that's definitely what he did on Saturday night. He had a pretty good game, to be completely honest. 6 points. He had 9 rebounds, 8 assists, 3 blocks. Biggest problem was he was 2 for 9 from the field. He couldn't get his shot underway, really. He really struggled with his shot. But all around offensively, he had a great presence. Without his shot, even like just facilitating, and you can see with the rebounds and the assists, he did a really good job. I'd like to see him attack more. I would really like to see him attack the rim more. There was way too many times that he was sitting about 20 feet out with his back against the basket, looking for a pass instead of making an attack. Now, that this comes into play with what I get to one of my options with the bad here in a minute, and I think that had a lot to do with it. But moving into Big 12 play, I hope we get to see a lot more of Coleman Hawkins doing more aggressive things towards the basket. He said last week after the Drake game that he likes to give the ball. He likes to be a facilitator. He doesn't like to be selfish. I think he's going to have to be a little more selfish getting into these games here pretty soon. And then I'll end with the good here. I got 3 goods. That's pretty impressive for a 20-point loss to a non-conference Wichita State, who just lost to Kansas City a couple days ago. But including Buddy Rich, there was some high energy from multiple bench pieces. And I think that's really big because you're still trying to figure out who fits and where. And it's sad that it's taken 11 games and we still don't have those answers. But guys like CJ Jones, guys like Buddy Rich, guys like Moby, they did really good off the bench. And they brought a lot of energy. So that was really impressive. And there was some moments where guys like, especially like Moby and Buddy, they really brought it in some opportune moments, some really key moments that helped keep Kansas State in the game heading into half and at the beginning of the second half. So gotta love that. So definitely. All right, let's get into the bad here. And I think right off the bat, you have to go with Kansas State had no answer for Xavier Bell, and they had no answer for Ballard, their big guy, who was Quincy Ballard. And really, Ballard, I think he still got double digits for points wise, but what they couldn't get the answer for him was he was just an absolute defensive force. He kept Kansas State out of the paint for most of the game. He clearly messed up whatever game plan that Coach Tang had and his coaching staff for Kansas State. I mean, it was a struggle. And I think that had to do with what I mentioned earlier, Coleman Hawkins. There was multiple times, way too many times, where he was sitting 20 feet out with his back against the basket, looking for plays around the perimeter instead of driving into the lane, because Ballard was such a great shot blocker. He has been all season. And honestly, it's looked like he was intimidating the entire Wildcat squad, with the exception of Buddy Rich. Buddy Rich was driving that lane. It was super impressive. But yeah, they had no answer for Ballard on the defensive side. Xavier Bell was fantastic for the Shockers. If he enters the portal, that was the only thing that came to my mind as we keep talking about transfer portal and all these new guys. If for some reason he enters the portal, I don't know if he has eligibility left, but if he does, I would love to see him as a Wildcat next season. The pace of play slacked extremely too. And that was something that irked me. And if it bugs you too, let me know. But the pace of play with this Kansas State squad seems different this year. And I mean that in a negative way. They're very slow. They wait to make ill-opportune shots until there's only 3 or 2 or 1 second left on the shot clock. And they're only making that one shot. They're not looking for, the most higher percentage shots. I don't like it. They need to be a little bit more aggressive. We did see some improvement towards like the final 5 minutes of the game, being a little bit more aggressive. It didn't last long. I think it was almost for like a last second hope too. So you weren't getting great shots, but you're being more aggressive because you had no other choice, because you were slowly losing quickly. Like you were getting down by almost 20 points. You finished being down by 20 points. It was all said and done. 19, excuse me. But I do think the pace of play needs to improve. You're going into Big 12 play. the best conference in college basketball. And you had a hard time against one of the easiest non-conference schedules that Kansas State's seen in quite some time. When you look at KenPom, when you look at net rankings, they'll tell you that. But unfortunately, the net rankings and the KenPoms are putting Kansas State down in the area that is probably not even going to get an invite to the NIT. And that's really, really upsetting and really concerning based on what this collective, this campus, this university, these fans have put in towards this roster. We're going to dig into that a lot more this season. Hopefully things turn around and as we get close to Big 12 play, and we're there, folks. It's not close. We're there. 6-5. Now we have 20 games left on the schedule. I don't know if a 10-10 record is going to do it to get us to the champion or get us to the NCAA tournament, but we'll find out. Next on the show, I want to talk about Coach Tang's comments because I do think he had some interesting things to say. And then we're going to talk about the Big 12 as we get closer and closer to that. And we finish off 2024. We'll get through the holiday and we'll finish off with a game against Cincinnati and looking forward, who needs to step up for this Kansas State squad. We'll do that all here on Locked On Kansas State. But first, let's talk about FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, and it's not too late to get in on that regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers can bet, and this with the season-strong $250 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Kansas City Chiefs are looking for that #1 seed. They got to win next week to clinch it. They can't. The Buffalo Bills can't catch them. If they win one of their last two, might as well make it next week. And they can just rest on week 18 and have that extra bye. Rest that knee, rest that ankle for Mahomes. Can they do it? Do you think that they can do it? Or do you feel like they're going to go all the way again this year and win the Super Bowl? Maybe you want to put a futures bet in. You can do that with FanDuel. Maybe use that $5 bet and you get that $250 bonus bets if you do so. So check that out. I think it's going to be really cool. I think FanDuel is the #1 sports book. I don't just take my word for it. They are the #1 sports book. So just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets if you make that $5 bet. Make every moment count with FanDuel, the official sports partner of the NFL. And welcome on back to Locked On Kansas State, your daily Kansas State Wildcats podcast. For your second listen, check out Locked On Big 12. Hey, especially on Christmas Day, because you'll see a familiar face possibly wearing a Santa Claus hat. Maybe. Check that out. Drake Toll is breaking down the Big 12. He's got some very interesting words and interesting thoughts about this Kansas State basketball team right now. And it's just as concerning as you'd think. The national media is thinking that this team, I don't know what else to put it lightly, a joke. And after going 6-5 in non-conference, one of the easiest non-conferences, it's hard to disagree right now. Coach Tang, in his post-game conference, he had a couple things to say. Obviously, he talked about the game and he put some issues on the coaching staff. He said for 2 games in a row, the coaching staff didn't take care of what they needed to take care of. I don't know how long he's going to continue to use that as his reasoning for the games to be lost. Hopefully he doesn't have to keep saying that because it means Kansas State wins and not on a 3-game losing streak anymore. But I don't know how long he's going to continue that. He also found a new buzzword this weekend, and the word is consistency. He said it was on his undershirt, and that's what he's been walking around with this week and saying the word is consistency. Now, if you remember last week, it was all about the buy-in of the team after the 10-day break. This week, it's about consistency. What does that mean? Well, Kansas State does not know because they have not been consistent this entire season so far. The only thing they've been consistent with is keeping their win-loss record very close to each other. And that's not something you want to be consistent with. You don't want to have a close to 500 record heading into conference play. This is a team that I said after the Drake game should be 9-1, but instead after Wichita State we're 6-5. Because of some very unfortunate play from this basketball team. I'll still go out and say that if this team performed the way that they should have performed, because I think this game was still winnable, but they did take off at the end. So I'm going to go ahead and give Wichita State the win there in my hypotheticals, this team should at least be 9-2 heading into the conference, and they're not. But consistency was his buzzword for that. I think that you have to focus on guys like, I think you have to focus on guys like the leaders, Coleman Hawkins and David Gesson. I think you have to make that happen. He had a terrible game. Gesson did. He was 4 for 8, over 3 from the 3-point line, but all of those came in the second half. He struggled mightily in the first half. He got in foul trouble very early on some pretty awful fouls. I mean, kind of boneheaded fouls. And Hawkins, as we mentioned, he's supposed to be the leader of this team, and I don't think that just has to be because of his money, because of the paychecks that he is reportedly getting. But I think that he is, the prime leader. He showed it when he brought Illinois to 4 straight Big Ten championships. At least helps doing so. And being the leader of this squad so far has not been very good, I would assume, for his NBA draft stock. That's just my assumption. But him playing 37 minutes this past week in the game against Wichita State, obviously he's going to have to step up, and we're going to get to that in the final segment of who I think needs to step up. But spoiler alert, Coleman Hawkins is definitely one of them. There's no doubt about that. I really do think that he needs to put this team on his back. I don't think he's doing that enough yet. He needs to be a little bit more of a leader, without question. And then finally, what Coach Tang said, and I think this, I don't know if this was taken the wrong way, or maybe he just shouldn't have said this at all. Actually, I do think that's what he should have done. He shouldn't have said this. There was no reason for him to say this. When talking about this Wichita State game and him the team going to Wichita to take on the Shockers and playing on the road for the first time, and I believe it was since 2000, they said on the broadcast. He said that he thinks that this doesn't do them any good to keep this on the schedule moving forward. Now, one, I'll say this. I don't think Kansas State is in the situation for them to think of what is good for them, what is not good for them. Not right now. Not when you're 500 in non-conference play. Unfortunately, I don't think you're at the right point to do that. Now, it's great having that mentality, and you are a coach that once did take this team to the Elite Eight, but this team is not that right now. Hopefully they can get there, but it's not that. So I don't think you can have that conversation at this point in time. He also added in, and it was quickly, but he added in that this game, and he said, like the Big East Challenge, doesn't do any good for them. I agree with the Wichita State one. Although I love it on the schedule, it's great for the fans. The fans love it. I think it should be on the schedule. It's a great battle. It's a great rivalry. But the Big East Challenge, saying that doesn't do good for you, I don't agree with that whatsoever. Because if you look at the net rankings, that Big East Challenge you just had against St. John's is in the net rankings in the top 30. That is higher than the average of the Big 12 Conference. Because I believe the Big 12 Conference's average is in the 40s, mid-40s. So if you would have got that win, Coach Tang, it would have definitely done you good. If the teams was 9-2, like we said they should be in hypotheticals, what does this comment mean? Does this comment take different meaning? I think so. But did they even make this comment? Probably not. Why? To me, this is the whole thing about changing the narrative and trying to get their mind off the game of the poor performance, trying to take it off the players. Why? It's time. It's time to really, put their money where their mouth is, if you will, in the case of this NIL, and start getting the job done. There's only 20 games left. They all mean so much. And if they want to have a shot at the NCAA tournament, as crazy as this season has already started off as dreadful as the season's already started off as, there's still a shot. He did say one thing right in his post-game conference. He did say that this team is 0-0 now. That's pretty true. That's quite true. Going in the conference play, they're 0-0. That 6-5 will have a small amount of something to do with the tournament. But if they get quality wins in the conference, in the best conference in college basketball, this non-conference schedule will take a back seat to those. So there's lots of things to do. He did give one little moment of inspiration based on some past history and said that a former team when he was with Baylor started the conference play 2-8 and wound up making the Sweet 16 that year. If you think that's hopeful, if you think that helps you continue and have a chance for this squad, then great. I am going to have them prove it to me, probably multiple times, for me to get my optimism back a little bit for this basketball team. So bear with me as we do that. Let's finish up this squad and talk about 3 things that Kansas State must figure out before they begin conference play this weekend against Cincinnati. We'll do that as we finish up this show here on Locked On Kansas State. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscription you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I wasn't even realizing I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them down. I mean, have you ever had 2 Netflix accounts? I certainly have. It's like having a personal assistant for your financing. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscription, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings, spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. 2025 is coming up. Perfect time for a New Year's resolution. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. So go to rocketmoney.com/locked-on today. That's rocketmoney.com/locked-on. rocketmoney.com/locked-on. And let's put a bow on this one here at Locked On Kansas State. And please do me a favor once again, if you are listening on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button. I'm trying to build up. Hopefully by the end of the year, maybe we can get to 200 before we hit the 2025. That would be fantastic. That would be awesome to see. So if you haven't done so already, please hit that subscribe button. And if you want to get all the update information when these episodes drop, I try to drop them around 7 a.m. every single day, Monday through Friday. Central time, but I do plan on dropping some bonus episodes as well. So hit that bell so you're up to date and you can get some Kansas State on demand when you're ready to go. All right, there's multiple things that need to be fixed with this squad as they head into Big 12 play. 6-5, obviously, when you look at the KenPom rankings, there's only one Big 12 team below them in the KenPom rankings, and that's Oklahoma State. They sit at 90th, I believe it is, in KenPom at the moment. And below them, Oklahoma State's at 104. Everybody else in the conference is above them, is above 90. When you look at the net rankings, they're 125th. They were 105. After the game, they went down to 125. To put it in perspective, they're about to take on Cincinnati. According to the net rankings, that's 125 versus 25. Cincinnati is the 25th team, according to net rankings. 100-point difference, 100-team difference, according to the net rankings. That's where Kansas State is after non-conference play. Did you have that? Did you have that on your bingo card? That Kansas State, a team that we thought could have Sweet 16, Elite 8 aspirations heading into conference play, as 125th in the nation? I didn't. I didn't at all. All right, so obviously the first thing in my mind is what needs to be figured out before they begin conference play against Cincinnati this weekend. They got to play the right players. And against Wichita State, they played 10 players. They only played a guy like Doug McDaniel for 5 minutes. Was that the right choice? They had to play Gasson only 22 minutes because he had foul trouble. Castillo played 21 minutes. Got another start in the game. He was 0 for 8 from the field, including 0 for 7 from the three-point line. Obviously, guard game is still a concern. Where's those minutes go? Buddy Rich, he only played 19 minutes, had a career high 20 points. Do we think that can be sustainable? Should we give him more minutes? Coleman Hawkins played 37 minutes. Is that sustainable for the entire Big 12 conference play heading into March Madness? Can he handle the longevity of playing basically every minute, every night in conference? There's a lot of questions that still need to be answered, and we're running out of time. Let's find out. That's my first concern. I think that's a huge concern. What are you buying into? That's number 2. Last week's buzzword from Coach Tang was need buy-in. Well, what are they buying into? This team at moments show energy, and at moments they show very dull. I don't, for a lack of a better term, quit. They show quit. What are you buying into? Are you a team that is going to be okay with mediocre, finishing at the bottom of the Big 12? Or are you going to grind and find a way to finish with a 500 record in conference, maybe even a winning record in conference, and hopefully find a way to sneak on the bubble for March Madness? You got a lot of transfers on this team. Some are seniors. Some are going to be playing their final college basketball. You want to do it in the NIT, or you want to do it battling for a possibility for a national championship? And then number 3, I mean, I kind of said this earlier, but you got to put your money where your mouth is. You know, I'll go back to when Jerome Tang was standing on the scores table after beating Kansas, and he said, you can get used to winning. You can get used to this feeling. We haven't really had that feeling since that moment. But with the new NIL pushes from fans and donors and, you know, the campus and everything, you name it, you got to prove those to the collectives that they aren't wasting their time. Because expectations have consequences when those expectations are not met. It could lead to changes in coaching staff, smaller NIL budget moving forward, less fan engagement, less recruiting interest, higher traffic that leads out from the transfer portal. All of those are terrible things to happen to your program. And guess what? All of those factors lead to more losing basketball. And it's just a domino effect. And that those changes, those coaching changes, those NILs, those things, those lack of interest will just continue to build up. This starts here. You got to nip it in the bud right now. When you have it very good, when the collectives, the NIL, all the budget did exactly what they needed to do to get this staff and to get the roster they wanted, you can't mess this up. They got to figure it out in Big 12 play. Let me know your thoughts. What is your 3 things, or what is just one of your things that you are looking for Kansas State to figure out as they head to Big 12 play? And if you finish up listening to this one and you want to leave me a comment and you need a prompt, let me give you one right here. What is your record prediction? They got 20 games in conference. What's your record prediction for Big 12 play for the Wildcats this season? 10-10 could get you on the bubble. It could, but could they get there? Do you have faith? Let me know in the comment description below. Hit like and subscribe while you're there. And until then, this has been Locked On Kansas State.